Hey everyone, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to be reviewing the movie, Where'd You Go, Bernadette? So the point of this review is to give you a quick insight into, how we enjoy the movie and ultimately for you to decide whether or not you should see the movie. So to help guide us, we actually have a series of questions that we provided answers for. So let's get started. Number one, what is one word you'd use to describe the movie?
I put uplifting for my word because this was just, at the end you realize how uplifting it really is. The rise of Bernadette from the ashes to come back to her family. It was just a beautiful story.
Yeah, definitely. For me, I chose the word candid because this movie isn't super dramatic. There's not a huge plot twist or anything that keeps you going. If anything, it's a series of much smaller but subtler build-ups that ultimately get you to the end. But with that being said, I never felt bored during the movie. It never dragged and it kept you going, which I thought was very impressive. So number two, what is one sentence or phrase that you would use to describe your experience watching the movie?
I would say sort of intelligent, but on the edge of my seat, which is something that's pretty hard to achieve.
Yeah, definitely. For me, I said, who is Bernadette? Because I was a little hesitant, of picking this because the title of the movie is Where'd You Go, Bernadette? So I felt like I was ripping that off slightly. But throughout the movie, you get bits and pieces of who Bernadette is as a person, as a character, some insight into her past and what got her there. But every time they gave you information, I just had a million more. And the whole time I was going, oh my gosh, who is she? She's so fascinating. Like give me the whole story already. So that is definitely my experience in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Number three, how would you describe the movie to a friend?
I would describe this movie as the perfect case study between treating serious topics, but also throwing in exactly the right amount of humor and humor that makes sense for the plot. So I thought that it was a wonderful movie. They threw in
very well balanced.
Yeah, very well balanced. So wonderful humor about sort of suburban life and being a stay-at-home mom and all of the little things that you have to deal with.
Yep, very good way. For me, I'd say typically I'm a person who does enjoy what I call Gilmore Girl-esque style of entertainment. So what I mean by that is kind of like a lifestyle following around, a person, a family, but it's not comedic, such as, Friends or How I Met Your Mother. So a little bit more grounded, if anything, more realistic. But even with that said, I still love this movie because of Bernadette. She is such a complex character. Cate Blanchett, awesome job. I know nothing about acting, but I think she did an awesome job portraying her. So, even though they go through a lot of all the challenges and problems that they experience, you can relate to. There are things that I saw where I'm like, yeah, I've experienced something similar, probably not exactly the same. But the fact that Bernadette was so fascinating is what ultimately made me like it, despite it not typically being my cup of tea, personally. So, next question. What did you like most about the movie?
Yeah, I put Bernadette's personality because it kept it light and it kept it exciting. Yeah. She's a very complicated character, but she's also extremely funny in the way that she has this dialogue with herself, and it's just frankly hilarious. So I think they did a great job writing this movie. Did
you ever get annoyed by her internal dialogue?
A little bit. It came a little bit close. She's definitely a very strong character.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Now, I definitely see a lot of her in myself with the strong internal dialogue. Man, something I need to watch out for. For me, what I liked most about it, I somewhat alluded to earlier, which is the progression of the movie and its subtleties. So the way the movie develops itself is it gives you small bits of small pieces of information. So I believe the first scene is, you see that this huge mansion on this vast plot of land. So they're probably wealthy in order to afford something like that. But there are leaks everywhere in the house, which it doesn't add up. So in the beginning, I was kind of like, why is that, right? And then with Bernadette, so something you find out pretty early in the movie is that she's actually somewhat famous, and which generally means that she has some accomplishments. But why is she so wary of society? Why does she avoid, human interaction? Small things like that is what kept me so intrigued, despite it not being, an action movie. It wasn't Fast and Furious or Marvel, right?
Yeah.
So the next point, on the flip side, what did you dislike most?
Yeah, I had a hard time coming up with an answer to this question. So my one thing about the movie that I disliked a little bit was the timing of the husband, Elgin's job change.
Interesting name, Elgin.
Elgin, yeah, very interesting name, who works for Microsoft and has worked for Microsoft for a long time, for basically their entire child's life. And then at the very end of the movie, something happens with his job. And to me, it was just like a little bit too convenient.
Plot twist.
Yeah, minor
Not
plot
twist.
twist. It's minor spoiler alert, retroactively.
Yeah. I mean, it's not really a spoiler because it's not like it changes the movie, anything. So
Yep.
For me, it actually has to do with the character. I'm forgetting her name, but it's Audrey, one of the mean girls who doesn't like Bernadette. Audrey's friend, who actually ends up being Elgin's assistant, very conveniently. But the reason why I didn't like her in the movie is just because I felt like they were kind of overdoing it with the whole mean girls gossiping, you know, that stereotype. And also she didn't add that much to the movie. Like if they had any other admin, right? If Elgin had any other admin, nothing would have changed. So I somewhat found myself a little annoyed by that because I think that whole mean girl thing was just overdone.
Yeah, she was definitely at the center of the midpoint of the movie, I would say, too.
Yeah, she was, they did show her quite a bit. So we're coming to the end here, second to last question. What would you rate the movie?
So I was very positive on the movie. I had to think for a long time to think about what I disliked about the movie. And in the end, I gave it 9 out of 10.
Wow.
Penguins. Yep.
Penguins, yep.
Very high rating. I enjoyed it.
For me, I actually love this movie as well, but generally I'm more of a critic when it comes to movies, just because if you're gonna be paid so much effing money to write and develop a movie, like, you better give me some quality content. But with that being said, I gave it 7.5 out of 10 blackberry bushes, and I rarely go above that 7 mark. I have a lot of expectations when it comes to entertainment, but yeah, it was very hard for me to pick, honestly, something I disliked. So very well done. And then finally, our last question: would you recommend the movie, and if so, to who?
Absolutely. I would recommend that basically every adult would enjoy this movie for the most part. If you have a mom, you'll enjoy this movie. In a major way. It's a great film.
Yeah, for me, I definitely agree. I would recommend this movie. Generally, I think the target audience would probably be adults, people who maybe, have worked a bit, have a career, because a lot of what keeps you interested in the movie is that like the human interpersonal interactions development, all those themes. When watching this movie, it kind of reminded me of a book I had to read in high school called Devil in the White City. You've probably heard of it. Very famous. Would not recommend it. Did not understand any of it as a 14-year-old. But the reason why I'm bringing this up as an example is because in that book, there are 2 storylines. They follow H.H. Holmes, who is a serial killer, and the architect of the Chicago's World Fair. I'm sorry, I don't remember the architect's name, but I know he's very famous. So the reason why I was reminded of this book while watching this movie is because it didn't have action, right? It wasn't something that got the adrenaline flowing. And I remember my 9th or 10th grade teacher saying, generally when people are younger, they're more interested in H.H. Holmes' storyline, right? Because it's a serial killer. He takes these girls into his hotel and then kills them. Wow, right? That immediately draws your attention. But generally when people are older, they're more fascinated by the architect's storyline because it talks about all the difficulties and challenges he faced while designing the Chicago's World Fair. And I definitely think that movie is probably more in line with, the architect. If you were interested in that kind of storyline, you would be interested in this.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think that there's a lot of the movie that resonates with a little bit older crowd. But kids could see the movie. There were some very simple, humorous scenes that I would recommend. This is really just a movie for anybody. Yeah,
I think kids would like it, but they might get a little bored, honestly. I wouldn't think this is a family film, if anything, but with you and some of your friends, I think that's a more fitting crowd for this movie. So I think overall, we both highly recommend it. It was very, very good for both of us. Anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.